And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to this special edition of the Storycraft Cafe podcast live stream. Tonight, we are kicking off what's kind of a pre kickoff meeting for our Write a Novel in 60 Days with Dabble challenge. This is something that I just dreamed up about a month ago, and then I emailed some of my best friends and said, "Hey guys, I've got this idea that I want to do and I don't want to do it alone. Why don't you come on and do it with me?" And Josh Hayes and Ian Garner and Amy Hale and Lauren Moore were all just, ready to go on this crazy journey with me. And what we're going to do, I'll just kind of give everybody a really quick introduction. Dabble, who sponsors the Storycraft Cafe, has been a sponsor of NaNoWriMo for a number of years, and we love Nano. And Nano, the idea behind it is to write at least 50,000 words, because that's the kind of entry bar for novel length work is 50,000 words, and you do that in November. So in the whole month of November, what's that come out to? Has anybody done Nano? Like 1,670 something words a day, I think it is. I'm just pulling it off the top of my head. But if you're going to succeed at Nano, one thing that they tell you is that you should prepare ahead of time. So I was thinking, what if we had a month to prepare and then a month to then, with the preparation that we've done, get those 50,000 words. Now, some people, that may look like a full month of preparation and a full month of writing. Some people, it may look like a couple of weeks of prep and then 6 weeks of writing. We're not being dogmatic about that, but I was just thinking, what if we took this great concept, stretched it out a little bit to encompass, and the challenge that I gave these guys was, let's come in with a fresh mind and go from idea to plan to first draft in 2 months. And everybody said that sounded like a lot of fun. So here we are. And yeah, 1,667 words a day. Mr. Beanie's Biddy Bond said.
Oh, there you go.
So,
Bam.
yeah. Thank you
I was
for
off
that.
by one. I fail.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I'm Hank Garner. I am the chief evangelist at Dabble and the podcaster extraordinaire. Ian is an English teacher, a middle school English teacher who has written a number of short stories. Ian, this is your first long work that you've committed to, though, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Nice.
No
and-
pressure or anything.
no pressure. That's just what that's what we're here for. Josh is the author of several science fiction and military sci-fi, specifically novels. And you also, back in the day, I remember when I first fell in love with your work, Josh, was when you wrote that series, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of it, but you'll correct me. The one that was the retelling of Peter Pan.
Second Star. It's unpublished now, but yeah, Second Star.
Yeah, I love that. I loved what you did with it, and since then, your military sci-fi especially has just really taken off, and you've honed a niche there for that. And so that's Josh Hayes.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Amy Hale. Probably the person other than Ian that I have known the longest in this group. Amy and I go back over a decade with some other work that we used to do. We could talk about that later. But Amy has found this really interesting niche in romance with a little fantasy and some kind of supernatural stories. Welcome to the challenge, Amy.
Thank you.
And Lauren Moore, editor extraordinaire and one of the Keystroke Medium stalwarts. Lauren is one of the best editors that I know, and she brings a really interesting skill set to the challenge. But Lauren has decided to write her first novel length work. You've written some nonfiction before, right?
I have, and also I co-wrote a novel with Richard Fox.
which is out there. And then I've got another Western romance that's on my hard drive and not published, not released to the world yet. But this is going to be my first, going to be military fantasy.
Military
Nice.
fantasy. Well, writing with Richard Fox, that should um, get you special gems in your crown in heaven or something.
That taught me a lot, and now this will be all me, and I'm excited for the challenge, and also that we have this whole structure here to kind of keep each other motivated and to do this as a team, to take on this challenge as a team. So I'm excited.
So, Lauren, I know that we've said that we have tried to not do much planning ahead of time, but I think we all have been kind of thinking about what we want to write. And um, the book that I'm going to write, I'm using some characters that I had already created in a town that I have already created, and so I'm coming in with some things already known, and I've got to work out some plot things coming up. But Lauren, have you thought about what you're going to write? Did you say military fantasy? What does that mean?
Yeah. So this will be a novel that will be set in my friend's universe. And they already have a series going on, but it's a series that I have not read yet. But it is a very expansive, immersive universe. So right now I am in research mode. I am listening to the books on Audible. If I had my druthers, I'd be creating an encyclopedia right now. But we are getting short on time. We've got like a little more than a day before this starts. But right now, I'm just kind of like soaking myself in their universe. I'm taking notes. I'm trying to figure out what this world is like, what these characters are like. My character that my book is going to be centered on is kind of mentioned a couple times, and she's kind of a mysterious person. So my task, should I be able to complete it, would be to take on this one character and create a whole novel that's about an incident that's again mentioned in another book, but I have to like flesh it out and create the whole story behind that incident.
Love it.
Yes.
Amy, what about you? What are you thinking that you might get up to?
Uh, well, to be honest, most of the stories that I write, I've been thinking about forever.
Yeah.
That they hit you, in the middle of the night or whatever, and you think about them and you obsess over them and whatever for months and months, sometimes years. The one that I'm actually considering going with is it's a ghost story. Because I really love the paranormal stuff with my paranormal romance. And then I just finished, I wrote, my last book was a thriller, and I kind of like getting into the darker stuff. So I think I'm going to go with a full-fledged ghost story based off of something that kind of happened when I was a kid.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Ghost stories. There's something that I just absolutely love about a story um, that mixes real life with a little fantastical, kind of the things working behind the things. Those kind of stories just really um, get the wheels turning. So I can't wait to see what you come up with. Josh, you are kind of in the middle of writing a series. I think you're finishing up book one right now. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. My series is called Weaponized. It's a completely new universe for me. The first book, just today, I crossed about 120,000 words and probably hit like 130, 135 before it's done. I was hoping to have that done before we started this, but it looks like it's not going to be completely done. But I'm just going to start book two before book one is done, and it'll be fine. I'll make the time because I've got to. I just looked at my my idea file for book two, and it looks like I've got to scrap like half of it because of stuff that I changed in book one. So I will be writing the second book in my Weaponized series. It's called Weaponized Wrath. The first one's Weaponized Fury, and it's basically military sci-fi / a little bit of a spy thriller.
I love it. So that's funny because you would think, oh, Josh is coming in and he's going to write book two. He's got a world already fleshed out. He's got plot devices in play, and then you're going into book 2 having to restructure some plot and stuff because the story went somewhere that you didn't expect it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, the finished product or the manuscript where it sits at now looks nothing like the last half of my outline. Like it absolutely, like about 2 months ago, I realized that where I was going was not where I wanted to be, so I had to scrap like 20,000 words. I added a plot line and then took it in the direction I needed to go. Well, I'd made the plans for book 2 before I made all those changes, so now I've got to go back and restitch it.
Okay, I'm going to come back because I want to talk about that in just a minute, because we're going to talk a little bit about plotting, and you have always been my plotting hero. And
Yeah.
you know, I talk about my friend Josh all the time, who is a stalwart plotter and planner, and you're talking about something that people say you avoid if you're a proper planner. So I want to come back and talk about that in just a minute.
Cool.
Ian,
Yeah.
what are you planning?
All right. So my plan is to do a YA high fantasy novel, because as a middle school English teacher, that's what I feel like I know best. And I've always loved Celtic mythology, any mythology really. I've got Lord of the Rings swords hanging up on my wall right behind me, actually. I want to take the idea of St. Patrick, and you know how the story goes, he drives all the snakes out of Ireland and all that. Well, I was doing some research, and the word that they use for snake in the Old Celtic might be a mistranslation for dragon. So my idea is, what if St. Patrick gets kidnapped by pirates, and he finds that Ireland is completely overrun by dragons, and he joins a group of druids who teach him how to fight back against their dragon overlord, something like that. So,
Wow.
Take my money.
That is cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty hyped for it.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. The story that I'm writing, I wrote a book a few years ago called Writer's Block, and it was about an author who was very successful, and he had written a series of books, and he was trying to deliver the final book in a series, and due to life situations that happened, he developed writer's block and he couldn't get through it. And the story is not so much about his writer's block as it is about him working through the emotional baggage that he had that gets him to the place where he can get through that. So and I've had the most feedback from readers about that character, so I thought this would be a great character to explore earlier in his life when he's first breaking in or trying to break in. And I've got this little town that I've created that's been in a number of books that I've written, called Weston, Mississippi. It's a made up town, but interesting things happen in this little town. So I'm going to write a murder mystery, which I've always wanted to write, like a real murder mystery that's like Agatha Christie-esque, and it's something I've never written before. And but I'm taking characters that I know already in a place that I know already, and then killing people and finding out what happens. So that's that's what I'm planning on doing. Oh man. Amy, are you a planner or a pantser?
I call myself a planter. I used to be 100%, pantser. But I have learned to at least plot the main points and then, take off from there. But I always know my beginning and my end. It's always the middle that's just a little fuzzy. But yeah, I kind of combine the two.
Gotcha. While we're talking to you, Amy, Yam655 said, what sort of plot structure for the ghost story? A traditional Western structure? I've heard Kisho Tenketsu, I know I just murdered that, is good for that sort of thing. Do you have any input to that question?
At this point, no, because it's really just starting to form, and I've got to kind of sit down and figure out the best way to tackle it. And I think that's going to depend on a lot of different things. So at this point, I'm not really sure yet what I'm doing. I mean, I'm totally like no clue at this point.
Love it. I love it. Lauren, do you have any opinions about plot versus plan, or pantsing versus planning?
Yeah, I love planning. I love planning. I love to know where we're going to go, who these characters are, what the world is, what the conflict is, how the different conflict threads are going to come together. And the audience that I'm writing to has really high expectations. Like they really love a well-crafted story. So, in order to get this book published and to make those readers happy and engaged, I feel like this has got to be really good. So, I'm planning on spending a lot of our time the next 60 days planning and plotting it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what the major plot points are and then just start fleshing it out on my Word doc and get all my beats out there. And then when I start writing it, I'm just going to flesh out those beats. And if I get to a scene that I'm really inspired by and excited by, I'm just going to go ahead and write that and then keep on building on from there. So I'm thinking about writing this outline kind of like a painter might like add more detail, add more color, add more color, add more layers. And I'm going to do that in writing form. That's my plan anyway. We'll see how it actually happens in the next 60 days. We'll find out.
Our friend Steve Bowyer talks about the onion method of writing, of
Yes.
writing something and then going back over and adding more texture and adding and adding and adding until a 500 word scene becomes 2,000 words or something by just adding texture onto that. And I've always liked that analogy.
Yeah, that's the exact idea. And I'm going to have two main point of view characters. So I'm going to need to get to know both of those characters. One, she's kind of nerdy. She's a little bit like me. And the other one, I'm going to use Dan Cranshaw as a character study. So I've got his book. I'm going to be reading this as part of my research and trying to get some like ideas of like, well, how would a seal think in different situations? So I'm gonna
Will there be an eye patch in your story?
Oh, that's a good idea.
I'm just saying.
No, he is going to be wounded, so I don't know what the wound is yet. I'll find out, but yeah, maybe.
I love it. Ian, what are your thoughts on planning versus pantsing?
It varies from moment to moment. I like to take what I call the Jack Sparrow approach to everything, where I just make it all up as I go, but make it look like I planned it all out from the very beginning, so no one doubts the brilliance of it. I will be making an outline, just a bare bones outline, because I need to know where the story beats are and where I can build up to it. But I still want enough of a liberal approach where the characters breathe on their own. I do know that I'll be using some of my D&D and video game knowledge of how parties grow, because I don't want Patrick doing everything all by himself. I want this to kind of grow into maybe like an ensemble story. So as far as planning all of it out, I have bare bones, just the most bare. But I will probably spend all weekend long eating my words and planning so much more initially. Yeah. So.
Josh, you told me several years ago now, you said, because we were having a spirited debate about plotting versus pantsing, and I'll have to dig the show up where we talked about it and listen to the actual conversation again, because I'm sure the legend of it has grown in my mind.
Oh, it definitely has,
from what the original conversation was. But you told me, you said everyone outlines. It's just, are you going to outline your story before you write it, or are you going to outline your story after you've written it and then, try to find some cohesive or coherent structure that runs through all the babble that you've written? And that has always stuck with me, that that there are that there is a plan that comes into all writing. It's just, where do you plan? And I like to know where the story I'm writing is going to end before I start it. I don't always know how I'm going to get there, but I always know the ending. And a lot of times I'll know the final scene,
Mm.
and there's an emotional um there's a payoff, and I'm writing toward that payoff.
Yeah.
And I don't always know how I'm going to get there, but I know where I'm going. Um, and then a lot of times I like to write 2 or 3 chapters just to kind of get to know the characters and kind of figure out who they are and kind of what they're going to be doing in their normal life, so that I can then stick them in a tree and then set the tree on fire.
Yes.
But so in this challenge, I've been trying to think about how I can be a planner, and how I can be more consistent with that, and more consistent's not the word I'm looking for. Be more intentional
Yeah.
about it, and this is becoming a real stretch for me. This forcing me to sit and think ahead of time instead of just thinking through my fingers, and thinking as I write. What do you think, Josh? How did your opinions about planning form? Is that just what comes natural to you, or was there an experience that taught you that this is what works best for you? How did you come to the ideas that you hold?
Well, it's 2 things. It's funny you mentioned the payoff at the end of the book, like getting there and having that where you're going feeling. It's the same thing in the outline, just smaller on chapters. Because if you have an idea for your chapter and you write to that idea and you hit that idea and you're like, solid, I nailed it. And also when you do that and you get to the end of what the chapter is, but you haven't hit the thing that you needed to hit on your outline. So now you have an extra chapter that you need to write to hit the thing that you wanted to hit on your outline, but whatever, it happens all the time. I have always been a planner. My outlining has grown in the way that I do it over the years. I co-wrote a series called Terra Nova with Richard Fox, the same Richard that Lauren has worked with. He's a good friend of mine, and his outlining method was very different from mine. And he would his process is basically you just start with an outline in Word and just write the scene, and then when that idea for the scene is done, you go to the next one, then the next one, the next one, almost like doing story beats, right? But he will put in brackets where he's telling himself this might not be true. And so he keeps author's notes in his outline, because the outline is basically the narrative of the story, the way the characters are involving it. But then he has author notes to himself to remind himself, this is not what it needs to be. You need to allude to something else. And he does that through his whole story. There's sometimes where he gets excited about a scene, and I do the same thing. I get excited about a scene, and I have a whole conversation in the outline with no dialogue tags or nothing. I just use like J dash whatever and say what it is. I use the character initials and all that stuff. So my outlines typically are for 100,000 word books, probably like 11,000, 12,000 words, maybe longer. I like to know where I'm going, and I say that, but I did like a 9,000 word outline for the first Weaponized book and thought for sure that's what I wanted to do. And I got halfway through and had to scrap all of it. But to Susie's point, the over planning, my outlines are detailed, but I am not married to it at all. So if something happens in the writing that I'm like, that is way cooler than what I wrote in the outline, I have no problem getting rid of all of it and just doing it again. And I've told this to several people when they're like, you take all the joy out of writing when you plan all of it and there's no experience. I'm like, well, you have to pants the outline.
Right.
I pants the plan. And so like that is the experience, and everything else is just color. It's like Lauren was saying, doing a kind of a painter's method. It's outline is just the sketch, and then all the rest of the words is just color.
Yeah, I get that. M655 said, if I can write a novel in 30 days, I can rewrite a novel in 30 days. When tackling a complete rewrite, planning and plotting are effectively the same, and
True.
that kind of goes back to that idea that Josh had about everyone uh, finds that narrative thread. It's just, are you going to do it at the beginning or the end? And
Right.
I guess that's just the difference in mindset. Um, when Amy, you in the ghost story that you're writing, do you have characters in mind? Are you you said that you have an experience based on something that is close to real life that happened. How are you going to begin to kind of flesh out your characters? And do you have any insight that you could share with us for kind of discovering new characters in a new work?
Well, like one of the characters is actually going to be a house I used to live in. I mean, that the house itself is almost going to be like a character, I think. And then there were some neighbors that I will probably base some characters off of. And then, of course, me and my siblings, I'll have to rework that a little bit. But yeah, there was some weird stuff that happened at this house. So it's given me a lot of ideas to take it and just run with it. But pulling from real life is a great way to come up with some crazy stuff, because sometimes real life is crazier than fiction.
Absolutely. And that character development is one of the funnest parts of writing to me, is because we all experience this cast of characters in day-to-day life, and finding ways to pull in this character trait and maybe mix it with this character trait, and then maybe mix a little bit of yourself in there with it. That's one thing that readers always look for a character in your book that is representative of you, and more times than not, all of the characters are representative of you, and different shades and different sides, and that's always fun to play with.
Yeah, I agree.
Ian, as a school teacher, are you going to find a way to incorporate students or faculty members?
Oh, wow. I hadn't considered that too much. There's probably one or two students I might put in there. Just, the ones that give me the most trouble, I'll probably make them one of the minor antagonists or something. I don't know. I will probably share the progress with my students as I'm writing, kind of get some of their feedback to see what they would like to see in the book, because they are the target audience. So if I can get them as a captive audience in my class an hour a day and say, hey, so what do you want to read about when I'm writing this thing? What do you want to see? That would be a really huge benefit. And maybe I could give some bonus points. Like if you write a perfect essay, I'll name a character after you or something like that. Make it a cool group activity. Kind of get them to buy into it.
That'd be a lot of fun. And you have to share those interactions that you get from them.
Oh, yeah.
Josh, when planning out the grand scope of a novel, how much do you plan out characters? I heard Brandon Sanderson talk one time about that he likes to plot out the plot, but sometimes allow the character development to come about a little more by pantsing, kind of discover the characters as he writes them. But he knows what these characters are going to do, but maybe not all of the character aspects. How do you feel about character development?
So that is one of the things that actually I don't typically plan, and that is something that 100% usually comes out in the writing of the narrative. For instance, I have a character in the book. His name is Edwards. And in the book, I needed a medic. And so he just happened to be the medic in the book. And then it hit me about halfway through the book. Why don't I make him a religious guy? I don't have a religious guy in there. But then I had to go back and change to make a big point of him not swearing, because in a scene at the end, he swears. And I want that to be like really impactful on his character. But I didn't plan any of that. It just happened. And that happens with most of them. Like a lot of the beginning chapters are all plot, and the characters are there, but like the cardboard characters that you don't really know anything about. And then after, like right now, while I'm writing the end, I'm going back and filling in chapters in the beginning where I'm like, okay, I know who this person is now. I can do this in the beginning, and it sets up things later on. And a lot of that stuff is just fluid as I'm writing it.
Love it. Carol had a great question. Any suggestions for writers who work full time at another job and would like to write a book? I think almost all of us have other jobs or other responsibilities that we're juggling on top of our writing passion that we're pursuing. How do y'all juggle? Taking care of your daily responsibilities while also writing, and especially some people take a year or two to write a novel, but we have a window that we're operating in. So are there any things that you have developed over the years that you think might help you in this challenge or just in writing in general? Lauren, we'll start with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. My biggest battle is in focus and attention. So when you're creating a scene and you're doing creative writing, it's not like writing an essay where I've got my essay outline and my plan for all of my points, and then the words just kind of flow from the argument I'm trying to make and the evidence that I'm building. This is creative writing. So I might have like a general idea of what's supposed to happen in the scene, but I don't know what the characters are going to say and where I need to have prose and description and stuff. Like those words have to flow. And to untap that, I've got to have my mind clear. So a couple things I've noticed that can help is one, a daily habit. So I've got my time, like, oh, it is 5 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not going to make the choice about whether or not I'm going to write. This is just my writing time that I found works most consistently every day. So I've got that time, I've got that place kind of carved out and figured out, and I can just kind of set to the task of writing. And that just helps a little bit. I mean, maybe all I can get is a few sentences, but I've accomplished feeding the habit for that day. And then other responsibilities can interrupt and I can move on with the rest of my day. But I know that I've got, for Tuesday, I have my Tuesday writing space and writing time allotted and figured out. Then the other thing is, I know social media has somewhat fragmented my attention and my focus recently. So I know that starting October 1st, and it's not October 1st yet, but starting October 1st, I'm going to have to like really put some limits on allowing my attention and focus to be distracted by other things like social media. So I'm going to have to pick and choose. And I choose keystroke medium. I choose editing, which is my full-time job. I choose my family, and I choose this book. And I'm going to have to just kind of pare away a lot of the other stuff for 60 days. Let's do this.
Love it. What about you, Amy? You've written 40,000 books. How do you juggle, the getting the words in while also, maintaining your relationship with your husband, John, and your kids and, other responsibilities? How do you manage it all?
Well, I'll admit it was a lot easier for me for several years because it was my full-time job. Outside of, kids and family and all that.
Yeah.
More recently, at the beginning of the year, I started working full-time due to other events that created a need for me to go back to work. And so now I am trying to relearn some habits to make sure that I get my writing time in. And that definitely has been a struggle for me. I mean, after working for myself for 10, 15 years, it's a little harder to get into the groove of working for someone else. But very, very much like what Lauren said, setting aside time to write. This is my dedicated writing time. Unless it's, the house is on fire or someone's bleeding, nothing interrupts my writing time. Setting specific moods. Like if I know I'm going to go in and write a sad scene, if I know that's what the focus is for today, I get the right kind of music going. I set the right kind of environment and I just get at it. And, sometimes the words flow real easy. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get them to, sometimes I may not get very many words out, but at least I got something out. And I think that's the main thing. As long as you're doing something, you're taking steps forward, you're going to eventually get it done. Some days are going to be great. Other days are going to suck. But it's just getting the words on paper, because you can't fix something you haven't written yet. And I think that's been usually when people ask me for writing advice, that's the first thing I say, just write it. You can fix it later. It doesn't have to be perfection. Perfection is the enemy of progress, especially with writing.
Yeah. And remember, at the end of this challenge, the challenge is to get a first draft written. We're not talking about a pretty draft. We're not talking about a draft ready to send to an agent or to upload to KDP or, whatever your preferred method of publishing is. This is first draft. And then we'll worry about editing and all of that later. That all comes later. But you can't do anything until you get that first draft finished. Ian, do you have any strategies that you've been thinking about to make sure that you stay on course?
Yes, controlled chaos. This is what most of my life is. Early mornings are a little difficult because I'm getting ready for work early morning. So what I'll do is any free time that I have at work, which is few and far between, I'll just brainstorm. I'll just come up with ideas like the whole researching like what dragons fit in. That was a work idea. So what I'll do is I'll come home, and typically I might play the Xbox for maybe like an hour, and I'll just pare that down to writing time instead. I was mowing grass the other day, and I turned the mower off, and I walked inside and just started scribbling down notes like a madman, grabbed some water, and went back out and finished the yard work. Just find whatever time in your day that you have to get these ideas out and just make it work.
I love it.
Just got to get it done.
Just got to get it done.
Yeah.
Amy talked about having that time as a full-time writer, but even when that is your sole job, you still wind up juggling the response. There's a lot of things that come along with being a writer that have nothing to do with writing. And Josh, with your work with Keystroke Medium, and now you're working with Athon Books and writing, there's a lot of writing stuff in your life that doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with you actually writing. And this is something that I struggled with for 8 years doing the Author Stories podcast, is that sometimes you can get so busy doing good stuff about writing that you're not writing yourself. And working with Dabble now, which is a dream job that I absolutely love, that's still job time, and then there's writing time. So those are things that I'm going to have to make sure that I set time aside as well each day. Do you have a time each day, Josh, that you like for writing time? Early in the morning, late at night, when the kids go to bed? Where do you find time?
I absolutely hate writing before the sun comes up, but that's when I write right before the sun comes up. I hate getting up in the mornings. I hate waking up with an alarm, but my best words are when I'm half awake and sipping coffee and the steam smears my glasses and then I can't see what I'm writing. Like literally I'm like glaring at the screen typing in the morning, and those are my best words. And then when I'm wide awake at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I just sit there and look at the computer like this and nothing comes out. And I don't know if that's because for years before I went full-time as an author, and now I still do it full-time. The Athon stuff's just kind of part-time, but I'd have to get up before my day job. So I would plan for 2 hours because you always say, I'm going to get up and write for an hour, and then you plan for that hour, but that hour really isn't an hour. The hour of writing is like an hour and a half of awake time, because you've got to wake up, you got to get your coffee or tea or whatever. It's not actually an hour. So yeah, I always plan for 2, so I would have at least an hour and a half to get going and get words done, and try to get 2,000 words in that hour and a half, and then go to work. And so I think just that, doing that for 3 years, just made my brain do all the good words in the morning. I can usually go till about noon. And then at about noon, I'm done. My brain doesn't want to work anymore. So I go and do Athon work or kick on the Xbox. And but what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be doing all the real writing, the finishing book one stuff in the morning, and plotting and planning is that's my jam. That's my meth. I will sit down and plan a book for like 8 hours straight. So starting on the 1st, I'm going to be doing that in the afternoons, and in the evenings just sitting down and plot. I love planning books. If I could plan books for a living, I would do that for sure.
Yeah, there's something, you said that you hate writing before the sun comes up, but there's something about when you do the thing that you don't want to do, and maybe in a time that's hard, in a way that's hard. There's a great documentary came out several years ago. It's called "It Might Get Loud," I think's the name of it, and it's 3 guitar players. It's Jack White from the White Stripes. It's The Edge from U2 and Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin, and 3 guitar players from 3 different generations, 3 different styles, and they just talk about playing guitar for. Anyway, it's it's nerdy in that way, but in the beginning, Jack White makes a guitar out of a 2x4, and he nails down a pickup, and he stretches a guitar string across this 2x4 with a Coke bottle as a bridge for it, and he talks about in the documentary, he talks about finding guitars that are out of tune and out of shape, and having to work at making something of it. And he says there's like a biblical analogy of that God said that you had to work the soil to make something out of life. And he said there's something about having to work at something that makes it more special when you get something out of it. And that's a really nerdy thing to pull out of that documentary, but that resonated with me when I heard that there's lots of things in life when you have to struggle at it, and you have to when it's not the time of day that is convenient. Those are when magical things happen a lot of times, when you put the effort in when you don't want to.
True.
Anyway, that's my sermon for today. I'm gonna if you're in Dabble, in the top right here, there's a goals and stats section, and if you hit the little gear there, you can put a deadline. So for my project, I put a deadline of November 30th, and my word goal is 85,000 words. And I know we said that the barrier for this challenge is 50,000 words. So as long as I get the 50,000 words and my plan, then I'm in good shape. But my ultimate goal is 85,000 words for this, because I did some research on the genre that I'm writing this in, and 85,000 words is kind of the sweet spot of that. So I plugged that in, and and I wanted to show y'all this. You can also put in days off. So maybe I want to take every Saturday off. I can just click those off days, and then go over to October, and I can take every Saturday off, and then save those changes. And then right up here, it tells me today's goal is 1,448 words. So every day I need to hit 1,448 words if I'm going to get that 85,000 words in the 60 days. And then it tells me I've written 1,016 words so far, 83,984 remaining of my 85,000 word goal. So anyway, some little things that might help. And then the plot grid, and we can talk more about this later. I've started kind of laying out scenes that I'm going to write, kind of what some of the key plot points are that I'm looking at, who the characters are going to be that fall into those scenes, where those scenes take place, and then sort of an inciting action that's going to happen in that. So then if I work out these cards for that, then when I go into that scene, then those note cards that I made show up here, and I can click those open and see what I wrote for those. So just a
I'm
glimpse.
really glad that I
at
watched your tutorial there because I had no idea you could.
what's. I didn't hear you, Josh. What?
I'm glad that you showed me that because I had no idea you could do that with the plot feature.
Absolutely. It's and this is something that Jacob, our CEO, and I have been talking about the last couple of days. Especially, he even gave me a challenge to think in terms of scenes instead of chapters. I've always thought in terms of chapters, like this is going to happen in this chapter, and a lot of times I'll have 2 or 3 different scenes in a chapter, and he challenged me to think in terms of scenes and then figure out where the chapter breaks are after the fact. And so that's something I'm thinking about. And yeah, we'll see kind of um, what that brings about. But anyway, those are some of the uh, initial things that might be helpful um, in the using Dabble to write a novel in 60 days challenge. Also, we Dabble normally has a 2-week free trial for any one of you. Can sign up and you can use Dabble for free for 2 weeks and see if you like it. Um, During NaNoWriMo, we extend that free trial from 2 weeks to 2 months. So if you'll go to dabblewriter.com, create an account, and then on October 1st, which will be Saturday, if you will register at nanowrimo.com and then link your Dabble account to your NaNoWriMo account, and I'll post an article about how to do this over on storycraft.cafe. That 2-week free trial will extend to 2 months. So if you want to join this challenge with us and not sure if Dabble is right for you yet, you can try the entire challenge and see if you like it. And we think you will. But anyway, go to storycraft.cafe and you can do that as well. Guys, Amy, Ian, Josh, Lauren, I'm excited for what's going to come out of this next couple of months. I'm excited about the books you guys are going to write and having friends there to hold me lovingly accountable, and I'm excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, man.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks for setting up this challenge. It's kind of always been like the back of my hand in my head, like I want to write, but now this is gonna like put my nose to the grindstone. And I like how we on the internet at Storycraft and at Keystroke at Dabble, we're gonna be doing this together, and
Absolutely.
checking in on each other through the podcast and through your newsletter and through the Facebook groups. So I think this is exciting, and we're gonna make it happen. I can't wait to see what it looks like.
I know it's going to be great. Go over to storycraft.cafe. There's a Google form that we posted a sign up where if you want to join us in this challenge, go fill that out. It's just I just ask a couple of questions. What's your email address? What are you planning on writing? Do you think? And would you like to join us on a podcast sometime to talk about your progress? And so this will just help us to all stay connected through this. And for those of you who said that you would like to join us on a podcast, then maybe you'd like to come and join us in one of our hangouts, talk about the story that you're doing. We're going to be talking, over this next couple of months about the victories that we're having, struggles that maybe we're coming up against, and we're going to help each other out through this. So thank you everyone that's joined us in the chat and in the live audience. We're also going to be releasing this next week as a podcast at the Storycraft Cafe podcast. So go over and sign up. Even if you come in a couple of days, after the 1st of October, there's no, there's not a cutoff there. You can join in anytime, and we look forward to seeing you. Amy, Ian, Josh, Lauren, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we will all be in touch, and I'm excited to check in with you guys again.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.